Hi, I'm Steve Adubato. Way more importantly, we are honored to be joined by the Attorney General of the great state of New Jersey, Matt Platkin. Mr. Attorney General, how are you?
Steve, I'm doing well. Thanks so much for having me.
Have you gotten used to that, by the way?
No, I don't think I don't think you ever get used to being called General. But I really appreciate you having me on today.
You got to tell folks a little bit about your background. Grew up where?
I grew up in Morris County, in fact, I live now in Essex County, which I know you enjoy to hear. I live just a few miles away from where my dad grew up in Clifton, and a few miles on the other side from where my grandparents grew up in West Orange. So my whole family is kind of from a very small radius, and grew up here. Graduated from Madison High School.
Well, it's a great honor, a big responsibility, and I'm going to ask you this right out of the box. When it comes to the issue of crime, violent crime, a lot of rhetoric around it. We're doing this right after the midterm elections, lots of rhetoric. The question really becomes, what actually can and should state government be doing, particularly out of your office, to fight violent crime?
Well, first and foremost, public safety is always our top priority. It's literally in the title of my department, the Department of Law and Public Safety. I said this the day I was nominated, and that's been true every single day that I've been in this job. We are extremely focused here under Governor Murphy's leadership and in our department in tackling a rise in crime. And I'm proud that in New Jersey, we've bucked the national trends. We have invested in violence intervention efforts. We have deployed our law enforcement resources effectively. We use an incredible intelligence sharing network to go after the individuals who are truly violent. Thanks to those efforts and the new laws that the legislature and the governor have passed and signed, we've seen a significant reduction in shootings in the state. And we've seen that reduction, importantly, in every single city of size across the state, from over 40% in some cities, down to the lowest in Camden, which is just 23% reduction in violent crime and shootings. And so what we're seeing is what we're doing here in New Jersey is working.
Do this for us. Be more specific, if you could. A couple of the actions that have been taken that you believe have produced those numbers. Numbers are people. They're not just statistics, please.
That's absolutely. Look, any one number, as you said, Steve, is a tragedy. That's somebody who lost their life or who was shot. And whether that's a victim, a bystander, a law enforcement officer, like we tragically saw a couple of weeks ago in Newark, any shooting is a tragedy, and gun violence is an epidemic in this country, and unfortunately remains an epidemic in New Jersey. But I do think what we're doing here is working. And I think about gun violence prevention in three areas. The first is we need to be smart in how we prosecute and investigate shootings. And we have done that. We established a statewide gun violence reduction task force. It brings together our state, federal, and local partners. And I've invested heavily in that task force. And thanks to the investigations of that task force, we have held accountable truly violent individuals who are committing shootings across the state. And we've used our resources effectively and efficiently to ensure that we're really going after those who are involved in violent acts. That's helped drive down the numbers. But prosecution alone is not going to be enough to end the gun violence epidemic. The second prong of what we've really focused on is, thanks to the governor and the legislature, we now invest more in violence intervention work than just about any other state in the country.
Define violence intervention work.
Exactly. Yeah. It's a nice name for something that people have been doing for a long time without any state support. And those are the groups on the ground who consist of individuals from these communities who can be credible messengers and go in and talk to folks who are predisposed potentially to be a violent offender, or maybe even predisposed to be a victim. And sometimes that's the same person, and help get them off that path and get them onto a path that's more productive and safer for their community. So we're investing in the community as part of our law enforcement strategy. And then the third piece that I'm very excited about is we're not just looking just at the person who's pulling the trigger. We're also holding accountable the companies and the retailers that are profiting off of this bloodshed. The legislature gave us powerful new tools, and I stood up a new office that is focused singularly on going after the companies that willingly sell firearms into our state, again, violation of our laws, that don't take care to prevent straw purchasers from purchasing guns. We know that over 80% of crime guns in the state did not start here. So we have to go upstream and hold accountable those that are truly profiting off of guns that are used in the commission of crimes in Trenton or York or Camden, Patterson.
Let me do this because I want to make sure we get a few topics in here. This is a big issue. You and your office, along with others in government and law enforcement, are dealing with the issue of auto thefts. Why, or first of all, Matt, if you can tell us, why do you believe there's been a significant increase in auto thefts? Number one. Number two, again, what's the role of your office in terms of curtailing, fighting it, dealing with it?
Yeah. So it's a great question, Steve. Auto thefts are a national problem right now. They're going up everywhere. When I took office in New Jersey, we were up 31% year over year. That's a staggering increase, and it's unacceptable. We're still up, but as of last week, we're only up 12%. So we've cut that increase by two-thirds of the amount just in the time that I've been in office. Why are auto thefts a problem? They're a problem for a couple of reasons. One, they make communities feel unsafe. If somebody's coming in and taking your car and you don't feel safe in your home, and as the chief law enforcement officer, that's a top priority for me. The second is these cars are being used in the commission of other crimes, particularly violent crimes. Increasingly, we've seen shootings involve 1, 2, or sometimes 3 or more stolen vehicles. And so the car that gets stolen in one community may be used in a violent act in another community. How are we addressing it? The same way, frankly, we're addressing gun violence through a multi-pronged effort, starting with a statewide intelligence sharing network to use all of our resources and go after organized car theft rings. These are organized. They are targeting communities.
Are they?
And they are. And we have used these resources effectively. The same way we've gone after shootings, we're going after auto thefts. We have an auto theft task force that I've invested heavily in and expanded with state police, Division of Criminal Justice, and federal and local partners. And the governor has put $10 million to play to significantly expand our license plate reader technology, which is the most powerful tool we have to combat auto thefts. And then the last thing is the new cars are very hard to steal unless you leave your key fob in them, and then they're remarkably easy to steal.
Right.
And so
but not everybody can afford a new car.
True, but the cars that are being targeted overwhelmingly still are luxury vehicles and high-end vehicles. I mean, it's not universal, but that is the key fob being left in the car is still the biggest driver of why these cars are so easy to steal. So we have to be vigilant about that. We're asking people to bring their key fobs in at night and make sure they're not left close enough in their house to the car that it could still be started. But on the enforcement side, we're doing everything we can to hold those accountable who are organizing these efforts, and more importantly, making sure that we're investing in resources that are going to help us be effective.
Let me do this. Got less than a minute left. As a former chief counsel to the governor, the position you held before this, you're a lawyer by background, obviously. The Katie Brennan case, we had Ms. Brennan on a while back, and she talked about our situation. People can read about it wherever they choose to. As the chief counsel, what was the biggest lesson you learned as it relates to the Katie Brennan situation? I'm a student of leadership. The biggest leadership lesson you learned from that in terms of being proactive and assertive in dealing with a crisis?
Look, Steve, I think in that role and in this role, you learn lessons every day. And I'm certainly one who has made very clear I've made plenty of mistakes over my career. And I've said about that case in particular, there are things that I would have done differently. And if you look at what we're doing here in the department, I think we're leading a national effort to combat sexual assault and domestic violence. We've stood up for the first time ever under my leadership, a new division that is focused entirely on victims of sexual assault, domestic violence, and gun violence. And that division is, which puts it on par, by the way, with the Division of the State Police, the Division of Consumer Affairs, Division of Law, big parts of our department. It's being led by Patricia Teffenhart, who's the former executive director of the Coalition Against Sexual Assault. And then on the criminal side, we have stood up a new effort to have, for the first time, a statewide coordinating effort around our sexual assault criminal cases and policy. And so we're doing everything we can to lead, but absolutely, you learn lessons every day. And anybody who's in any of these jobs, whether it's chief counsel, attorney general, or any senior position in state government, federal government, local government, and you know a lot of these folks, Steve, if you can't say you haven't learned from your experiences, then you're just not being honest. And so what we're trying to do is do the best we can for all survivors of crimes and all victims of crime in our state, in every community.
We appreciate you responding directly to one of the many challenging questions you've had to deal with in government. Despite your youth, you have had many, many difficult decisions to be made or not to be made in previous job and now as Attorney General. Thank you, Matt. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Steve.
You got to stay with us. Be right back.
State of Affairs with Steve Adubato is a production of the Caucus Educational Corporation. Funding has been provided by Eastern Atlantic States Regional Council of Carpenters, RWJ Barnabas Health, PSE&G, the New Jersey Economic Development Authority, PSEG Foundation, Newark Board of Education, PNC, Grow Up Great, the North Ward Center, and by Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. Promotional support provided by bestofnj.com and by Insider NJ.
How do you create change? By cultivating hope. And we see that every day. In the eyes of our preschoolers, in the souls of the seniors in our Adult Day program, in the minds of the students at Robert Treat Academy, a national Blue Ribbon School of Excellence, in the passion of children in our Youth Leadership Development Program, in our commitment to connections at the Center for Autism, and in the heart of our community, the North Ward Center, creating opportunities for equity, education, and growth.